All right, so what are we talking about today? Well, uh, again, as I think I may always say, the title suggests, um, talking about the fact that everything matters. And I think this is like I don't know, double-edged sword thought. It seems, at least I'm realizing, right? This sometimes people take heart in the fact that or this idea that maybe we're insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe, and so I can these failings in my life and the mistakes I make are okay, right? But I find that that's not really true. Like, the universe is big, cool, sure, whatever. But we are certainly not meaningless or purposeless, right? It's like saying, I don't know. There's always something physically larger, but to act as if we even understand that larger universe would be um, to propose something which is objectively false. We don't understand this larger universe. We can't quantify, just like we can't quantify numbers over like 100,000. We literally can't quantify the difference between a billion and 10 billion. You know, you know that it's 10 times, but there's no ability for us to even think of that number really as it truly is, how large that is. Um, the point being, what can we quantify? What can we understand? The world around us. It's. I find it absurd to say the feelings you're feeling today are meaningless. That the feelings you feel today are small, right? That your experiences today have no uh, Sartre talks about this existential, idea of an absurd world, of one where, in a world I understand very, very well. I grew up feeling depressed, very, very, very depressed to say the least, right? And in that state, as a child at least, growing up in the situation I did, it feels as if the horrors you see before you are outside of your control. And I think that's how we feel a lot of the times about the world, right? For me, that led me to this depression where I felt like life is meaningless. Exactly what Sartre talks about. Uh, this idea that we are not beings controlling our destiny, but simply being pushed by the winds of fate, right? I understand, right, as I've said, but I I have come to realize that that is fundamentally false. Both for the fact that it doesn't that how should I put it? A child would not believe that, right? A child does not see the world this way. And to me, what that signifies is that it is a construct of our to say over, no, it is a creation of our intellectual pursuits. It it's a product of a world we have created, not the world we live in. Right? We come up this world of oughts and therefores. Yet that's not the world that is around us. The world that's around us feels meaningful, if only for the reason that I'm living it. And that means it has meaning, right? To me, at least, right? To my own life. I only have this one, and it's precious. Now, first I'd like to talk about why everything matters from a psychological perspective, right? I like philosophy, I like psychology, but I think starting with a psychological perspective will give you a sort of grounding for this idea of everything mattering. When we experience the world, we can only take in consciously a certain amount of information. That's like to say you can only think about one thing at once. Factually, that is true. You cannot think of two things at once, not meaning you can't think of a broad idea, not thinking, right? But you can't simultaneously fully envision, picture two different thoughts and go forward in those paths. Magnus Carlsen, the but the greatest, if not the greatest chess player in the world, talked about how when he's thinking about possibilities in a game, he only visualizes one board in his mind. It's not as if it's 15 boards and then he thinks of these different possibilities. It's only one route he goes through, right? If I move this piece here, what will happen? This will happen, this will happen. Then he goes back to that original, our board's current board state, and thinks again, right? The point being, again, if the person who's the best at this thing, at chess, at this conceptualizing game, can only think of one board, we can only ever think anything that along with the actual scientific evidence is enough proof for all of us to understand that there is only one thought. And so if there's only one thought, when I look around and I experience anything, I am never able to understand the myriad impulses that my body is taking in. Our brain understands far more than we, the conscious being, do. And what I mean by that is, take something like driving. We think we're not very good at it, right? I feel like a lot of the times I'm like, everybody is a terrible driver, and this is a very common thought, right? But in truth, something a lot of people developing AI for self-driving cars have found, right, is that it's actually incredibly difficult to drive. And although and it takes so many different thoughts, it takes so many subconscious processes, it takes all this information in and comes up, and you have to come up with so much understanding from this information, right? Our brain is processing this. Our brain processes, there's a car next to me. Our brain is doing all these functions, yet we consciously are singing the words to Katy Perry, right? And so we feel like it's easy, but in reality, it takes a lot of mental energy, right? And what you're like, you've been talking about this for like 2 minutes. What is the point? I will tell you the point. The point is, when we're having conversations with people, when we're having life experiences, when we stub our toe, the information we're taking in, the effect it is having on our understanding of the world, is one we cannot and we do not consciously understand. In our minds, there are these things, well, as I say, physically not in our minds, but our minds create these things which psychologists and anybody calls schema, and heuristics. Now, these are the two ideas I think about a lot, although there's plenty of others um, that are similarly important. But to get to what I mean, heuristics are these connections we make between ideas. So, if a guy comes running at you with a knife in his hand, it the heuristic in your mind is the connection between knife, guy running, he looks angry, and fear and all these emotions, right? It evokes something that he's trying to hurt me, right? So it's a connection of two different thoughts. Um, and we don't consciously create these heuristics, right? Obviously, you never, you, I mean, you could try, I mean, right? Try to consciously associate two ideas. Try to associate popcorn and sadness, like just in your mind. You can't really do it. But what you can, what your body does and your mind does rather automatically is connect ideas. Sort of like a dog, but not really like a dog and a bell. Far more complex than that. When we smell popcorn, immediately our mind associates that with, or evokes images of different thoughts and ideas. For some, it might be a movie theater. Some, it might be a home, sitting on a couch with your family. Some, it may be negative memories. But all through our life, we are creating these associations, and we never understand what they are or understand that we have them until they affect us, right? And so this world that we're living in then is meaningful in the sense that it is always making us who we are. Now, I'll touch briefly on the other thing, other idea I touched on, which was that fact, I guess, I touched on was this idea of schema. Another sort of, I don't know, it can get a very complex idea, but put simply, right, it's this map. Now, you can think of it sometimes as a literal map, but it's not a literal map. Sometimes, I guess, it can act that way, but it's a map of our world. And what that means is we as human beings don't perceive the world as facts and reason and all these things. No. We think of our world as a storyline. And that's how we understand our lives and our lives in relation to others. Right? It's easy to think, right? And so, okay. Where would stories have come from? Except for our understanding of the world, right? Stories exist after human beings, right? And so there seems to be something innate with stories, and that is the schema, and our way of understanding the world as stories. And so the expression of those, of this way of seeing the world, this way of interpreting the world, is, the Epic of Gilgamesh, or all these other stories which we read and that we watch now on TV. So this schema in our mind, these different schema, however you want to, complex idea. I certainly don't fully understand it in all of its complexity, but we are always building this conception of the world. And so every conversation is adding to this story. And what we're doing is at times manipulating the reality, right? And so when somebody tells us information, if objectively somebody would say this means this, right? If I have a preconceived notion, however, like these are the preconceived notions, preconceived story of what they're going to be telling me, of how their life has developed, how their relationship with me has developed, that's going to color my understanding of the words they say, right? And at times when this is different, when this idea is different, right, then what I expect, what happens in our mind is we move to accommodate this new information, right? So say I think somebody cares a lot about me, and then they do something or show something or say something, right, that doesn't align with that reality. Well, my mind then says, okay, this is causing me pain, right? Not just because I thought they liked me and they don't, but there's always pain when there is a disparity between what we think and the reality. And so we move to eliminate this pain by accommodating, by saying, oh, I get it. They had a bad day. Ah, I get it. They don't like me, and the things before where I thought they liked me, they were just faking it, or I could then I go back and I come up with new understandings of those previous situations, right? That's how it happens. And so, again, how does this relate to things mattering? All of our experiences are creating this story for us. So how do we change this? Right? You're saying, okay, kind of cool. You know, we think of life as stories, all this bullshit. Well, how should I then change? What does this mean for me? Well, it means in our lives, right? We need to consciously examine the story we're telling ourselves, consciously examine the meaning in all of the things around us. There's no way to fully avoid misinterpreting reality. Everybody does it every day, actually, right? We do it all the time, and that's okay. But what we must try to do is try to better understand the reality around us, right? Try to think critically about these actions, right? And although it's very good to think about why other people would act certain ways, try to read into their actions, try to look objectively at their the implications of these actions, who they are. The only person you have full access to question, and the only person you can always get an answer from, is yourself, right? And so, and the most important person for you to understand is yourself. And so we must direct our questioning inward. We must. And so the self-examination is the path, is the key to self-improvement. Understanding, first going into thinking about your life, thinking about your day, as every single thing that has happened today has had an effect on me in some way. It has all meant something. And then moving to try to now understand, okay, I'm not going to understand all the meaning of everything. What can I understand? And try to figure out what all these impulses mean. I'll give you an example. I like to use this idea of stubbing your toe because it's something people think is meaningless. Today I stubbed my toe. Okay. You stubbed your toe. That's, that happens. Well, what does it mean? Well, let's look at it. First of all, it could mean physically I'm less aware of my surroundings than I should. And if I feel that's the case, I can go on this line of thought, well, why is that the case? Maybe there's something wrong with my mind. Maybe I haven't eaten a lot of food, and so, I'm not at my highest mental function. Also, I stubbed my toe. Why? Well, look at the situation surrounding stubbing my toe, right? What preceded it? What came after? Well, preceding it, I was running out the door because I was late. Okay. So why were you running out the door? Why all these things, right? And then we go down this list. Or look at what happens after. I stubbed my toe. Well, how did you react to that? Was it sad? Was it pain? Was it anger? Was it too much anger? Why then were you feeling this strong emotion? Do you feel like it was because there has been a lot of stress in your life? How then should we alleviate the stress? Everything is telling you information. It's showing you an understanding of your life, an understanding of who you are. Right? And so we must try to understand that, because we don't know who we are. We don't know. It's not like from birth we're given this certificate which says Kai is this, and then throughout my life I can refer to it and be like, oh yeah, I'm some psychology guy. That's there's nothing that doesn't exist. And so if we're trying to improve and understand who we are, if we look at different markers in our life, we can extrapolate and try to understand this larger truth, right? And so, although maybe, and the truth is, looking just at stubbing your toe can elucidate meaning, but often what I've found is it is in conjunction with other actions that it shows a truer picture of the meaning and the purpose and the understanding of myself, right? And so that's why we must do this, right? Because everything has an effect on who we are. Everything tells us something. And so we have to examine as much as we can about how we react to things, about what causes the different actions in our lives. You're never going to understand it all. But if you want to improve and understand who you are, you have to look to your own actions every day. Thank you.